Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Vedic Living. My name is Shri, and today we are going to talk about the chart of the nation India, Bharat, and I will also be looking at the Prime Minister of India, PM Narendra Modi's chart, because the ruler or the leader of a country, their chart really does affect the country itself, and vice versa. We can see a lot of connections between the leaders and the country charts. And that's one of the ways that astrologers predict a certain leader winning in an election or not, because when there are connections between the two charts, it does show a major karmic tie-up. So we'll be looking at both the charts to see what is happening in this coming year, because I feel like the year 2024 and 2025 is going to be a very impactful year for the country because the Dasha is changing. Whenever Dasha changes in an individual's chart or in a country's chart, it is a major turning point. So we will be talking in detail about this. So let's go forward and talk about this particular year, couple of years for the country of India. Before I go forward, I do want to remind you about my website, www.vedic-living.com. I have a lot of articles up there that you would probably be interested in. Sign up for my newsletter. I send out 2 newsletters every month, and it has a lot of information in it. So without further ado, let's talk about this upcoming 2 years for the country India and for PM Narendra Modi. So for the chart of India, I did a lot of research. It's a little difficult to find out which chart we use for India because Bharat, as we know it, has been existing for so many years. I think in one of the Vedic scriptures, Varahamira mentioned that the ascendant or lagna for the Indian subcontinent is Capricorn. However, there is very little information as to what that chart is. If I had that chart, I would probably use that because I would consider that to be the true birth of the country. However, since we don't have that information, we are kind of limited to using the information that is available to us. So the independence of India from British rule and the partition of the country, I think when a country gets partitioned, that is counted as the new birth of the country. So using that, I'm using August 15th, 1947 as the date of birth at midnight. So it's 12:02 a.m. Now, from the research I have done, this date was fixed by Lord Mountbatten. There was very little flexibility with changing the date. I wish there was a little more flexibility in changing the date because the planets are not really placed in wonderful places. Like we don't have any exalted planets or planets in its own sign of rulership, any Vargotama situations. We don't have any of that in this chart. So it was not an amazing date. But with the given date and the fact that it could not be changed, Indian astrologers were consulted as to the right time for proclaiming the country as independent. Now, that we can work with, but the only thing you can really change by using the time is this position of the moon and the ascendant. That's pretty much it, right? Sometimes even the moon cannot be changed because it might be in the same place in the entire day. But, sometimes the moon does change nakshatras during a day. So Pakistan, which was partitioned from India, they did not choose a certain time. They just went with whatever was given. So their independence was proclaimed a few hours before India's independence. But India said, you know what? No, we believe in astrology. We are going to look at the right time. Given that this is the day and we cannot change the day, we look at the time. And that is how India's time of independence is midnight. So around 12:02 a.m. because that puts the moon, as you can see, in Pushya Nakshatra. Pushya Nakshatra is considered auspicious. It's good for new beginnings. It puts the country in its Saturn Dasha. to begin with. And then right after that is Mercury Dasha. So it gives us a little bit of a stable time in the very beginning of the country's birth. The ascendant is Taurus, which is a fixed sign. So it gives stability and it gives a sense of, because it's an earth sign, right? It gives stable kind of growth. It may not be great, amazing, like, like one of the fire signs, it may not be like explosive growth, but it's at least stable and it's dependable. That Taurus is a nice sign for that. It's ruled by Venus. So, with the given circumstance, astrologers were able to find something that was okay in terms of the country's chart. And, if you think about it, yes, India has been stable over the years. So with that being said, August 15th, 1947, 12:02 a.m., you can see the chart of India. Now, what is interesting here is that the country started in its Saturn cycle, Saturn Dasha, and then it went into its Mercury Dasha. And you can see how events in the country has unfolded over these various dashas. Now, when India went into its moon dasha, moon sitting in Pushya Nakshatra in its sign of rulership in Cancer is a strong planet for the chart for this country. So the moon dasha started in 2015. So you notice how our Prime Minister Narendra Modi came into power in 2014. So right after he came into power, we went into our moon dasha, which is a good dasha for this country. The ruler of the third house in the third house, it brings technological advancement and gain in terms of all third house related activity. So this is a good dasha. 10-year cycle has been going on since the time PM Modi took over the country. And the reason I wanted to make this video is that India is going to go into the Mars Dasha very soon here. So it'll be around early 2025 that this will happen. So this is a big turning point for this country, because when the Mars Dasha comes around, there's going to be major upheaval and changes in the country, because Mars rules the 7th house and the 12th house, which usually in terms of a country, it rules its opponents. 7th house is opponents. In an individual's chart, the 7th house rules relationships, but in a country's chart, it's international relationships, it's opponents. And the 12th house is foreign places. So the fact that we are going into Mars Dasha is very important, because when Bharat goes into the Mars Dasha, there's going to be major upheaval, because Mars is all about action. Anytime you think about Mars or Martian qualities, you think about military and defense, and you think about violence. And in good terms, it can mean that the country is becoming very aggressive in what it wants to do. It's not taking a back seat anymore, but it also means that there is a lot of movement forward, right? And sometimes a lot of change can bring about major upheaval. So this is the nature of the dasha that the country is going into. And Mars is placed in Ardra Nakshatra. This is not a great placement, because when you talk about Ardra Nakshatra, it is, like they say, it's the teardrop. So what I think is going to happen going into this transition time frame, because right now we are transitioning from the end of the moon dasha into the early Mars dasha. So this transition time frame is going to bring a lot of change. And considering that the elections are happening this year, that is very telling for the country, because this is happening during a dasha change. So the outcome of this election is going to be very unique and sudden and groundbreaking. Looking at Narendra Modi's chart, which I'm jumping forward now because I will be talking about his chart in detail. But looking at his chart, I do think he's going to win this election. However, there is going to be an unprecedented kind of event right after the election, which may result in him giving it up. The outcome of the election, he might give it up, or somebody else might take over. So there is definitely going to be a major event right after the election, but I do think his chart is poised to win. Or India, because we are, and anytime this happens in anybody's chart, this is true. The transition point between two major dashas, mahadashas, is usually a tumultuous time because you're going from one way of the planetary influence to a completely different way of planetary influence. And one of the major tumultuous ones is going from Moon to Mars. It brings a major shift in a person's life. Why? Because these are very opposite planets. Moon is a watery, emotional, sensitive, happy, positive planet. Mars is all about aggression and anger. This is why Mars is debilitated in Cancer, which is Moon's sign. They don't understand each other. There is a lot of that fire and water kind of situation going on. So, because India is transitioning from Moon Dasha to Mars Dasha, this is definitely a major turning point for the country. So that's why the year 2024, especially the first half of this year, and I talked about this in the Uranus video that I made, because Uranus is stationed, standing still in the sky, exactly opposing the 25-degree mark of Jupiter in India's chart. And that Jupiter rules the eighth house of endings, destruction, and new beginnings and transformation. So, this is a very transformative year for India and new kind of developments, new awakening. Uranus is the great awakener. New awakening will happen. New technologies are going to come about. New ways of doing things is going to happen. But that transition time is going to be a little bit tumultuous. It's not going to be easy because anytime change happens, it's like a birthing process. You have to go through a little bit of a rough time for something beautiful to come out of it. So this is why this transition time can be tough. Now, going into the Mars Dasha for India, it's going to be a different flavor altogether. Like I said, I think the country is going to become more aggressive on the world stage. It's going to increase its defense spending or defense budgets because that's Mars. Military advancement is going to happen. There may be some conflicts with neighboring countries, definitely. And there's also going to be major power because that's Mars. It's in the nakshatra Ardra, which is ruled by Rahu. Rahu magnifies the energy of Mars, and Mars is ruling the seventh house of opponents and the 12th house of foreign places. So there is going to be some foreign interference in the country right around this time, in this transition time frame, because it doesn't look like, especially because Mars rules the 12th house, and the fact that Rahu sits on the ascendant of India, and the fact that Jupiter is going to go over that Rahu later in the summer time frame. So around the summer time frame is also very shaky for India, because once Jupiter goes over that Rahu, it is going to magnify major events which could have some foreign interference in the country. So this definitely looks like a turning point, but like I said, India has existed for millions and millions of years, and we have gone through all these different cycles. So every time something happens, there's something that comes out of it in a good way. So we'll have to wait and see what this will bring. But definitely the end of the year is also looking a little volatile for India, because notice how many planets are in the sign of Cancer for India. Moon, Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, Venus, Sun. It's almost 6 planets sitting in the third house in Cancer. Around the month of October to December of this year, 2024, what's going to happen is Mars is going to enter the sign of Cancer. Mars is debilitated in Cancer, and every time it enters Cancer, there are major violent events around the world. For India, that affects it more because there are 6 planets that Mars can intersect with in that time frame. So there's going to be major events towards the end of the year also for India. So if you think about it, this is like a birthing process. This is the time of change and breaking the restriction, breaking free, major events, and all this will lead to us going into a major Mahadasha, a new Mahadasha of Mars next year. Now let's look at the chart of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Again, there's a lot of controversy around the time that has to be used for Modi's chart, but he was born September 17th, 1950, as you can see. I'm going with whatever is officially known. And the official time that has been given for him is 12:09 p.m. in Vadnagar, Gujarat, which puts him on a Scorpio ascendant. Now, this chart does make a lot of sense. So I'm going to read the chart first, and then we look at the predictions for the upcoming 2 years. Prime Minister Modi has ascendant in Scorpio. So Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Mars is sitting in the sign of Scorpio. This is very, very important because whenever the ruler of the chart sits on the first house, it is a life that is marked with destiny. There is definitely a major emphasis on self. So this person, and I think that's part of the reason probably why there is no marital relationship or no children, because the emphasis on the self, right? Mars and Moon sitting on the ascendant. And another thing also is the ascendant is Vargotama. Whenever the ascendant is Vargotama, the person is really focused on self-improvement in this lifetime, self-evolution. His soul evolution, his spiritual evolution is so very important for him because the Vargotama planet brings all the focus back on self. And in this case, the ascendant is Vargotama. So this is very important. Another planet that is also Vargotama in his chart is Venus. Now, this is also a very important point because Venus rules the 12th house of spirituality. So he is very spiritually inclined. And in fact, there is a story that before he became the Prime Minister of India, he went into the Himalayas to attain spiritual renunciation. But one of the sages who were his guru told him that he needs to come back to this world and complete his karma in this world in order to attain moksha. And the reason that that was said to him, and I don't know if that sage looked at PM Modi's natal chart, but you can see it very clearly in the natal chart. When you have planets in the worldly houses, 1, 4, 7, and 10, you have to live in this world and finish your karma. And he has major, major planets in 1, 4, 7, 10. He has Moon and Mars. Moon, ruler of the ninth. Mars is the chart ruler. That's a Raj Yoga. It's sitting on his ascendant. Very important. He has Jupiter in the fourth house, which is the house of, your home, your worldly home, also your spirituality. And he has Venus and Saturn in the 10th house. Now, this Venus and Saturn is very important because this is also a yoga that is getting formed in the 10th house of career. Venus is his Amatya Karaka in Gemini astrology, and Saturn is his Atma Karaka. When the Atma Karaka and the Amatya Karaka come together, that is a Gemini Raja Yoga that is getting formed. So with this particular Raja Yoga, it puts a person in a great place of power and influence. Why? Because it's happening in the 10th house of public image and career. So this is probably why that great sage told PM Modi to come back and live in this world and finish his karma, because he has this combination in the 10th house of career. He has to finish it. Now, if he had this combination in the 12th house, things may have been a little different, but that's not the case. And also, we can see that, we know from Wikipedia and from the biographies that PM Modi has had a very difficult childhood. There was poverty involved. We can see that also here because we see the ruler of the second house of finances and wealth is Jupiter, and it is retrograde. It's not going direct. And another thing is Saturn is aspecting the Jupiter, which brings problems in finances and money and early childhood influences, because second house is early childhood. And if you look at the 11th house of gains, you see Ketu there sitting with Sun. So that does show problems in gains in early childhood. And also looking at the relationship with parents, you can see that his chart is very informative in that way because he's very close to his mother. He has Jupiter in the fourth house, so that shows the closeness to the mother. The ruler of the fourth house, Saturn, is aspecting the fourth house, so it strengthens that house. So the person is very close to the mother. And then when you look at the father, the ninth house is the father. Pluto is sitting there, which brings problems in the relationship with the father, or that the father was just not around as much. It also tells us if you look at the ruler of the ninth house, moon, it's debilitated. So that again reduces the strength of the father's influence in the person's life. And then you also see the sun, which is the karaka of a father, is sitting with Ketu, which brings problems for the father in the person's early life. So there is definitely, those things are telling us a lot of information about this person. Now, PM Modi went into, if you look at his dashas, now he did have a debilitated moon, but again, the debilitated moon is the ruler of the ninth house, and it is sitting with the ruler of the house, Mars, in Scorpio. So that brings down the strength of the debilitation. Now, when he went into his moon cycle, which is the ninth house of luck and fortune, that's when he went into becoming a prime minister. Now, what happened is that he went into his Mars cycle in 2020. So during his moon and his Mars cycle, if you notice, both are placed on the ascendant. He became the prime minister of India both times in both the dashas. So right now he's sitting in his Mars Saturn cycle, and Mars is ruler of the first house, and it is sitting in the first house. Saturn is the fourth ruler of the fourth house. And there is definitely a major, because Saturn is the Atma Karaka in this chart, it is a very strong planet for him. But around April timeframe, he will go into Mars Mercury. And when he goes into Mars Mercury, because Mercury is exalted in its exaltation sign, it's sitting in Virgo. It's the ruler of the 11th in the 11th. And then you have the ruler of the 10th house, the sun, also sitting there, 10th house as career. This does show major career gain for him. However, I have to say that he has to be careful of his health at this time frame, because this can also mean, because the Ketu is sitting there and he is going through what we call a nodal return. Transiting Ketu is on his natal Ketu, and transiting Rahu is on his natal Rahu. So this is a very kind of a turning point kind of time in his life, because Ketu rules moksha. So he will feel like he wants to renounce everything and, take up meditation, or he would want to leave and do spiritual activities in this time frame because of this Ketu transit. However, because he's in that Mars Mercury time frame, it will bring him career gains too. So this is why I feel he is going to win, but there is going to be a change of heart, or maybe his health is not good, or some reason that things are going to change during the summer time frame. That could probably change the outcome after that. Now, also another thing I wanted to mention is that transiting Jupiter is going to go into his seventh house in May. Now, this is also important because when it's in the seventh house, it will aspect all the planets in his 11th house, including the sun, which is the Karaka, or the ruler of the 10th house of career. So again, it is showing great gains for him in terms of his career. Now, Saturn is transiting his Jupiter right now as we speak. And this is also a very important thing, because Saturn on the Jupiter brings a feeling of spirituality, because Jupiter is expansive and Saturn brings a sense of feeling of spirituality. So this is also something that he's probably experiencing at this time. So looking at PM Modi's chart, I think the country is also going to get into a major tumultuous time frame, because he is also changing Dashas during this time. So not only the country India's chart, but also Narendra Modi's chart, I'm seeing that. So there is going to be major changes in 2024 and 2025 for Bharat, the country India. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe and like, and I'll come back next time with another video for a different country that we can analyze for the year 2025.